What would you, after Maroochydore, what were you sent to New Guinea from there?
Yes, we went straight to Port Moresby, and then within about 5 or 6 days had to commence the walk to meet the Japanese.
What was the transport ships like going to New Guinea?
They were Liberty ships, but quite comfortable and no problems at all. I remember looking down and somebody had thrown a meat case over and the wood was floating on the surface and there was a huge shark nuzzling it.
So when you landed, how long were you in Port Moresby? Very long?
We would have been there for, say, 5 days as a maximum before we commenced the walk across the Aaron Stanley to meet the Japanese. We had 6 days rations. 50 rounds of ammunition only. That's why we could never think in terms of wasting a bullet. I mean, you see these, what's happening in the Middle East with people firing into the air and all this sort of thing. We had 50 rounds, and that we never knew when we were ever, going to have the supplies renewed. We had 50 rounds. We had 5 tins of bully beef and 5 packets of what we call dog biscuits. They were very nutritional biscuits, but just dry, just like a dog biscuit. We had 5 of those, and that had to last us 5 days. And so, for breakfast, instead of one person opening a tin, which had to last all day, 3 would get together, and you'd open one tin, and each would have a third. At lunchtime, the other one would open his tin, and we'd each have a third. And then at tea time, they would open his tin and we'd have a third. And we'd eat it. We had our own biscuits. We'd have 3 biscuits for breakfast, 3 for lunch, 3 for tea. No problem at all. We didn't attempt to cook it. When they went up, we had those dixies. They've got in 2 parts. We only took 1/2. They were only permitted to take a half. They took a blanket. We're cutting down weight. But no problem with the food at all. It seemed to be quite nourishing, just 1 tin of bully beef and 1 packet of biscuits a day, more than enough.
How long did the walk up the Kokoda track, how long did it take before you had your first confrontation?
In all, we had stayed at Myola for a couple of days because they had to be reprovisioned with aircraft, and the low clouds prevented the planes coming in. They'd simply come in and then push the supplies out of they wouldn't land. They couldn't land. There was no airstrip. They would simply push the supplies out. So a lot was destroyed when they hit the ground. But we were there for a couple of days, and then 2 days later we would have been at Alola, or in the vicinity of Alola, and that's where I first saw the Japanese.
And what was your first incident with the Japanese?
Well, they'd kept our company, C Company, in reserve near brigade headquarters. A and B companies were at Abueri confronting the Japanese on an adjacent track to the Kokoda campaign. The 2nd 14th had already engaged the enemy at Ishiraba. At brigade headquarters, I looked across. There was a very cleared area on a hill, say 1,000 yards away, well, something in that vicinity. It had been a native garden, quite obviously, because there was still a patch of garden in the middle of it. Suddenly, I saw about 30 people surge out of the rainforest behind it, down this cleared area, and start frantically digging. We had no binoculars. We were standing there we thought they were Papuans, obviously ravenously hungry or something, trying to dig up sweet potatoes in this particular patch. And we were standing there watching them. Couldn't discern, you couldn't see the features of them. And very shortly from brigade headquarters, we were on a slight ridge, a very exposed ridge, just standing up watching. And they started calling out from us to get down. And what they were doing, they dug in a heavy machine gun and were firing at us, and the bullets were hitting behind the trees behind brigade headquarters. I mean, we didn't realise this until they called out. So we got down, and very shortly, brigade headquarters asked me to send out a section of my platoon, that's about 10 men, to silence the machine guns. So Doug Burgess, I was the platoon commander, Doug Burgess left to do that. That's the last we saw of our platoon sergeant. He was subsequently wounded, not very badly, but went back. So we were bereft of a platoon sergeant from that point on. But that was my first sight. It turned out to be Japanese.